10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The OUTA Hour, where your voice matters.
How's it? And welcome to the OUTA Hour. I'm Tom London, your host for the next 60 minutes. Thank you for joining me and the OUTA team that are standing by in their home offices, ready to link up to you via Zoom. It's OUTA's 10th birthday. And for this month, we are taking a look back on the last 10 years with some of the original team members. We had Ali Goulet on 2 weeks ago, and tonight Paul Powen, who's been a director of OUTA right from the start, joins us to take us back over the last 10 years. We'll hear the stories, we'll hear the interesting anecdotes, we'll reflect on the last decade and the accomplishments that have come with the last 10 years and look forward to the future with Paul Powen and the CEO of OUTA, Wayne Duvenage, on the show tonight. Also, joining us with some important updates is Andrea van Heerden, who's the Senior Legal Project Manager at OUTA. And you'll know that Andrea has been dealing with this driver's license extension project. Well, we've got some news for you tonight, so don't go anywhere. And then Wayne Duvenage will touch on the fuel price levy. There was an interesting statement made by the Treasury this afternoon, or today, came out in the media, saying that they are considering a change in the fuel levy, and that would be good for you. This all ties into the efforts of OUTA, who have been pushing for a change in the way the fuel levy is constituted, as well as a change in driver's license renewal periods. Well, we'll find out more. There's lots of details to come, and there are updates for you as an OUTA member, subscriber, supporter, as an ordinary South African. So do stay listening and watching. Masego Motsoneng will be handling your comments on Facebook tonight. Samantha van Nispen, who is the head of marketing and comms at OUTA, is joining you in the chat room on YouTube. And the show was put together by Devaney Davids. Let's say good evening to the CEO of OUTA and find out how his week has been so far. And say hi and how's it? A warm hello as we say hello to Wayne Duvenage. How's it, Wayne?
How's it? How are you, Tom? How's everybody out there? We're well. We're on top of the world from just a work challenges point of view. Lots happening. There's never a dull day. But I think we're also concerned about the impact of international wars and just bad leadership. But on the whole, it's nice to reflect after 10 years. We're going to do that tonight. How did we get to where we are? What is the future looking like? But yeah, nice session tonight. Lots to talk about. Looking forward to it.
And let's say hello to Andrea van Heerden, who is standing by and will form part of the second part of the conversation tonight. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
Hi, good evening, Tom, and good evening, all the OUTArians out there. I'm doing well, thank you. Rocking and rolling, as they say. So, no, I'm doing well, thank you.
And the comment section rocking and rolling tonight. Do engage with Sam and Masego in the comment section this evening, and nice to see the community and the comments growing and people making friends and joining each other in conversation in the comment section. That's what we love. That's what we're looking for. More of it, please. And the last person, but not least, that we need to welcome onto the show tonight ties directly into the last 10 years of OUTA. OUTA is celebrating its 10th birthday this month. And as part of that, we welcome Paul Powen, who was part of the OUTA team from the very start and instrumental in compiling the initial court challenge. Paul has been a director, non-executive director of OUTA, and still is. We say hello. He's been on the show once or twice before, but it's been a while and we miss him. Hello, Paul Powen. How are you?
Good evening to everybody. 10 years, I was a lot younger then, 10 years ago. I look forward to reminisce about the past.
So do we. Yeah. So do we. And thank you for joining us, Paul. Let's go back to the very beginning, Wayne. You know, the story fascinates me because you were a corporate animal. You were a CEO of a large company. I'm sure you hadn't planned to become an activist in your life and run a civil activism organization. You could have continued in the career you were in, and all of a sudden your life took quite a dramatic turn. What was that like? And just take us through that moment where Wayne Duvenage's life changed.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Look, it wasn't planned. You know, life just happens. But you know, Paul and I were representing the car rental industry at Savrala at the time, and this Etol beast came upon us, and we had to make some decisions. And we decided it was time that business raised a challenge against Sanral. This was after, by the way, a year or so, from the end of 2010 right the way through to 2011, a lot of trying to engage with Sanral to understand what they were doing, how this was going to impact on our industry. I was at Avis as CEO at the time, and we were getting very frustrated with Sanral and their arrogant attitude about, you know, it's our way or no highway for you car rental people. And we got a legal opinion. Paul was very instrumental. We got a legal opinion that said, you know, Sanral and the government have been out of line, and we should challenge this. And as we announced that towards the end of 2011, so the DA wanted to be part of it, and we got other interested entities, the Quad Para Association, the retail motor industry, and so we started talking as a collective. Savrala stands for South African Vehicle Renting and Leasing Association, which Paul and I were on those committees. And we realized this is bigger than just Savrala. We needed to do something more. And I'm going to ask Paul to, you know, he will reflect a bit on the work. I tell you what gave us wind in our sails was that interdict. But that interdict would never have happened unless people like Paul, Mark Corcoran, and Adrian D'Oliveira, who was the council, the junior council, did not slog till 2-3 in the morning, 7 days a week, for about a month to put that initial case together after the Minister of Finance at the time, Praveen Gordhan, announced that they were going to proceed, having heard the plight and the frustrations of society. That was a slog, just beckoning to the call of the junior council to say, I need this information now. I need that information now. You know, did they consult with you? Didn't they consult with you? All of these things and the rationality arguments were being put together just through this hard slog. But just how it impacted me, it was just really a case of I had to make a decision. It was either do my full-time job or do this full-time. Couldn't do both. And this was specifically after the interdict in April 2012, because once society had interdicted and given government a smack in the face and stopped it in its tracks in introducing an irrational ETOL scheme, when that happened, I think Paul, I mean, you remember the elation and the emotion in that court, and the media conferences after that. And internationally, by the way, Al Jazeera, BBC, sort of sitting up and saying, well, the rule of law is working in South Africa because civil society has just changed or smacked government in the face on a policy and halted its policy in its tracks. And how does this work? And how did you do it? And why did you do it? It was extremely uplifting and a lot of learning. But wow, Paul, you take us through those emotional periods, those long slogging hours, and how we got to that interdict. It was mind blowing.
Yeah, take us to the early days, Paul.
Well, the very early days. One day, I received a call before 6 o'clock in the morning from Wayne. At Savrala, initially we thought of complying to the ETOLs and put our industry, set up a team and started talking to Sanral, and then we quickly realized that they were not, that it wasn't going to work for so many reasons, and they were intransigent, as Wayne says. And then that day, just about 10 to 6 in the morning, Wayne phones me. He's on his way to the office. He said, "Paul, we must fight this." So the first thing I did, I asked him if he was crazy, and I still maintain he was, because it cost us both our jobs, if you want. We embarked on this trip, and 10 years later, looks like it's been a long road.
How did you come up with the name OUTA?
We were sitting, a few of us, at the Balalaika Hotel, and the council said, you got to give a name to your organization. And all the names we were thinking of were sort of taken already. Out e-tolls and out insurance and out this. And so, and we thought of different things. And so eventually, I can't remember who came up with the name, but it stuck, and it was, organization uniting against total. When?
So it was. We wanted an acronym. That's right, Paul. Yeah, and we couldn't bring the papers, the case as Sevrala, because the RTIA. I mean, it's not RTI. The RTI and the Quad Para Association, Sanku, SATSA. We were all various organizations in tourism. And so we had to come up with an acronym that spelt out what we were doing, and it could roll off the tongue. And I remember, okay, well, what are we doing? What are we trying to do here? And the first thing was we're opposing tolling. And then we said, no, it's not all tolls. We're not opposing long distance. We're opposing urban tolling. These are urban roads. So that's where OUT, opposing urban tolling. And then Paul quickly Googled, we said, we've got to quickly register the website or the URL. And Paul Googled it and said, no, Outsurance has got out.co.za. So we said, okay, well, let's add an A on. It'll be OUTA. And what does the A stand for? It was either association or alliance. So we said, okay, we'll fix that later, but let's quickly register OUTA. Went into the court chambers, not the legal chambers, and that's how the papers were lodged as OUTA. So it's quite interesting. And then obviously in 2016, we changed the acronym, changed it to not Opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance, but now became the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, because we broadened our mandate. But that win, remember that day in court, Paul, when we heard the judgment, as the judge got closer to giving his outcome, we could just see where it was going.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But I was very anxious the couple of days before, when the opposing council were telling us about all the catastrophes that were going to happen if e-toll was arrested or stopped, and it was going to be a complete disaster for the country. And but I think we had with Franklin and Alfred Cochrane, we had actually a very good team, and so we were lucky. But I tell you one thing, I burst out in tears when we won, because
it was emotional stress. It was emotional stress.
Wayne, take us back to that court battle. Just describe those initial days of court battles and what transpired.
So what happened, Tom, is firstly, when we got this legal opinion and made the decision to fight it, we asked the lawyers how much, and they came to us and said, between 500,000 and 1 million. And Paul had experience about lawyers, is double it. Actually, what he meant to say was times it by 10. When lawyers give you a price, watch their lips and just times it by 10. They're not telling the truth. That's another story for another day. We learned very quickly. But so we had to do, the first thing was Sanral were going to launch on the 30th of April. We had to get this case done in such a short space of time, because there's always counter arguments or opposing papers or responding papers, and there was a certain timeline. If we couldn't fit it in, we could not interdict. And the case was split into two parts. First, we had to bring an urgent interdict, and it was urgent because they were going to launch and we had to stop it. And second part B, was that the courts were going to review this decision based on our arguments. And we found out afterwards that we were very lucky to get the interdict, because we had come very late. technically the judge shouldn't have ordered in our favor, but he did because he'd heard this, as Paul says, this incredibly well-positioned argument by Cockrell and Franklin, the counsels. But that I cannot tell you the emotion that we went in just sitting for those few days listening to the arguments. You hear your lawyers and you get so elated. You say the judge has to believe us. Then you hear their arguments, say, oh my goodness, no, now we're going to lose. Because they also, lawyers put forward arguments that are all reasonable, you think, listener. Then ours responding arguments elated us again. And we were on tenterhooks. And the first time in ages, they say, it's happened a couple of times only, that the court opened on a Saturday to give his judgment because e-tolls was going to launch on the Monday. And he had to give a judgment on the Saturday. We all went through to the court to listen. And, well, we had a party. We had a party that afternoon because we got what we wanted. We halted e-tolls in his tracks. So, yeah, lots of hard work. And Paul, I just must thank you for it. Wasn't for you.
It was a teamwork. It was teamwork for many people. Adrian put so much into it. And I mean, we were just doing some, but it was crazy. But I thought we were doing the right thing, Wayne. And that's your leadership was incredible to be able to galvanize so many people around this cause, and I'm thinking of Ari Serlis from the Quadpara Association. He was fantastic. I mean, he was every time we sat in the discussion with him, he was encouraging us and he was pushing us, and it was incredible. Yeah. So there was great unity amongst all of us, and that's what gave us the energy to drive this.
Paul, the two things I see coming out of what you're saying is energy and some focus on the task ahead when it came to challenging e-tolls. But the OUTA's name changed in 2016 and OUTA became the organization undoing tax abuse. What prompted that?
Pressure from the public.
Yeah. The public basically asked us, you're doing a great job on tolls, you're fighting government, but there's so much corruption going on. In those days, 2015, 2016, and Kandla was headlines, Zuma's conduct, and they said, why just e-tolls? Why don't you go and do more? And we said, okay, that's a good idea. We unpacked it. We spent days asking ourselves, what's this going to look like? And what do we have to do? And how much funds do we need? And what are the teams that we have to build? And we had learned one thing, that the cost of litigation is high. We wanted to, if we were going to hold people to account and lay the criminal charges against them and delinquent director charges, we were going to have to do so without making legal firms rich. And work with our own legal team. That was a fundamental, and it's a fundamental difference, by the way, to OUTA and many other NGOs, where we built our own litigation capacity, which Stefani, you all know, heads up, and Andrea is part of that team. Paul, it was about broadening the focus.
Wayne, do you remember us trying to organize the funding? I mean, we were broke, and we had sleepless nights about having to pay those costs. Yeah. And I mean, thank God the crowdfunding model came about. But until then, I mean, you and I were using our savings account, and I remember going around the country with you, and we were trying to sell T-shirts and stickers and what have you. We tried everything.
We were on the radio begging people to join to support us, and it was a slog. We owed our lawyers 4 million rand, and then they said, we're not going to go and do this appeal, which if we didn't get that appeal right, we wouldn't have been able to do the e-toll challenge, the collector. We wouldn't be able to challenge all the summonses, which is what started the crowdfunding campaign, so we could defend the public. So we needed 1 million rand within a week to go to the lawyers said, you owe us 3 and here's another 1 million. We want that in the bank account now. And that was a pivotal moment, Paul. Remember when we called a press conference and said, and said to the media, please just tell the public this is their case. Unless we get R1 million in our bank account in the next 3 or 4 days, we cannot file our papers in the Supreme Court to challenge the costs order and the bad judgment that the High Court had given. And we got probably R3 million to settle some of the bills within a few days. I mean, that was a very pivotal moment. If we didn't get that money, we wouldn't have got
But
OUTA would have died. OUTA would have closed down.
there was an interesting part about that judgment, is that once the judge awarded costs against us, he forced us into an appeal. Had he not awarded costs against us, we might have just walked away and with our tail between our legs.
We would.
But once he put the cost against us, we knew we had to now keep fighting on forever.
Yeah. It sounds like you had it sounds like you were collecting the right team, Wayne, the right group of people around you, and you had a direction, and you had some focus, and you had an objective. You needed petrol in the tank, in money at the end of the day, and between then and now, the petrol in the tank has changed, and you're able to fuel this vehicle differently. What was the turning point? I mean, what took you from going on television and making appeals just to get those first court challenges over and done with, to the organization you've got today, where you don't have to go on television and make appeals for money today? It's a very different organization and changed quite a bit.
Very, extremely, and it's like anything. There's two components to this type of success. The one is people energy. Nothing happens without people energy in civil activism. Nothing. This is not fought with robots and you use all the tools, but it's all around the minds of individuals. And to get the right individuals, to get the best people in the team, you cannot do this in a volunteer space. You have to pay people. You have to find the right people and pay them market-related. The best people and market-related salaries. And you can't do that without money. So getting the right team and the resources required the funding. And it was from that, it was from a discussion we had with other people working out strategy that we put this crowdfunding e-toll defense umbrella. First of all, we said we would defend every single individual who was summoned for non-payment of tolls. Every one of you on one condition. We had the funds, and we can't run this organization on one-off donations. We need people to sign debit orders and give us, rather than give us R1,000 a year once off, give us R100 a month, please. And just stay the course with us as we build the team to fight this case and fight on your behalf. And as those funds grew, we grew the team, and we grew the strategy, and we grew the structure, and we experimented with what we call civil activism unusual. We wanted to hold people to account. We didn't want to just expose corruption. We wanted to go after the perpetrators, hold their feet to the fire, make them feel the pain of a team that was going to fight in the corner of civil society. And that dynamic, Paul, over 3 years from 2016 to about 2019, it wasn't easy. We had strategy discussions. We had headbutting sessions with some of the directors that wanted to take the organization in another direction. Building the team and building the strategy was a lot of trial and error, a lot of frustration. But we got through all of that. We've got our governance in place, got a good board. You never stop with governance, by the way, constantly looking at systems, processes, internal audits, standard operating procedures. That doesn't stop. But it's all about having the best team. And I can tell you now, for the last 2 to 3 years, we've had the most incredible energy and team that is so stable, 45 staff, fluctuates between 42 and 48, of just highly energized, passionate, professional activists that make this organization what it is today. It's just, I sleep better at night than I did 3 years ago when it was.
I'd like to take you back, Wayne, to when we, after this court challenge, we ended up having lots of meetings with the government.
Yes.
And one day we sat with the Minister of Finance, and it was Sanral and us. And there were two things. Sanral kept, before that, they advertised all sorts of numbers and they're talking about us being incompetent. And in the meantime, the spreadsheet we'd worked out were more accurate than anything they had said, because in the court papers, what they put in their court papers were reflected exactly what we were saying on the one hand. And secondly, the most important is that the Minister Pravin Gordhan asked us, if you remember, after discussions with Sanral, they presented their case, trying to present us as incompetent people. And the minister said to you, so how much? If you don't want 50 cents a kilometer, how much? Give us your price. And what did you say? Zero.
It was very interesting, because there was this interministerial committee, and what Paul's talking about, we met, they wanted us, and we had a lot of head banging sessions. Eventually Praveen called us in, and we had this discussion, and it came down to, it reminded me of a wage negotiation. So he says, okay, well, if it's not 30 cents or 50 cents a kilometer, what's your number? And we looked and said, well, maybe you're not listening to us, Mr. Minister Gordhan, but it's zero. It's nothing. This is not a 1 cent or 2 cent issue. It's zero. It's no fee. And then we got thrown out the offices.
Sounds like fun.
The discussion ended. The negotiation stopped, and so okay, we can't agree, so we just moved on. And the fight started, and I can tell you, if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't have got our message out. So we use social media very well. And so look, Tom, I mean, this discussion, we're going to have more on this was the first part of OUTA, that whole court challenge and the journey into the new. And I'm sure we'll reflect more on the 10-year journey on that era of 2016 up until now, the amount of cases and the big milestones. There we'll bring other people into the discussion. But Paul, it was lovely reminiscing.
Thank you.
Chatting with you.
It was great.
Coming on board. And we'll catch up with you in the next board meeting soon. But thanks for spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and a good evening to you. We wish you a good night.
Thank you very much. I'll keep watching, but I'll mute myself.
Fantastic. Wayne,
Thanks.
you've got, I'm sure you've got a million stories, but just give us one, Give us a highlight for you, something that stands out for you in the last 10 years.
I think there's so many, but the obvious one, the positive emotional one, was that interdict. Because of the ebb and flow of a case, listening to it unfolding, and then going home and saying, I think we've lost this now. And then going back the next day and saying to my wife, I think we've actually won this. But when we won it, I cannot tell you the stress in sitting through a court challenge like that. The bills that were mounting. They told us R1 million. We hadn't even finished the interdict with R3.5 million. The pressure, the stress of that leading up to the 30th of April. When that judge ruled in our favor, it was, as Paul says, so emotional. The tears were flowing. It was just incredible. And then there have been some really other good ones, the Dudumnieni judgment, having heard declared the delinquent director in a very precedent-setting case. And so many others. We've done over 220 projects in the last 6 years.
220.
Yeah, 220. Some of them very quick, some of them a couple of weeks, some of them years and costly, like the Dudumnieni case, over R5 million, 3 years of slog. So it's a whole variety, with about an 83% success rate on all the projects that are applicable.
Hello, darling. How are you?
I think that
become non-applicable.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, Paul, you might have to mute your microphone. We hear you saying hello to your darling, which is nice to know you've got a darling. Right, Wayne, can we shift gears slightly? That's not meant to be a pun. But and talk about an issue that is really important to South African motorists, but also it affects the basic price of goods on the shelves because of the transportation required to get goods to shelves, and that is the fuel price and by extension the fuel price levy. I'm taking a look at some of the news reports that are coming out on News 24 and Times Live today. I've seen headlines like record petrol and diesel price hikes expected in April. That kind of headline sends cold shivers down the spines of ordinary South Africans who now have to fork out more money to get to work, to take kids to school, to catch taxis, to get on buses, to buy food, etc., etc. And you've been pushing for some time, pushing government to say, hey, revise the way you look at the fuel levy. And today some news came out where it is being said that revising the fuel price formula could slash 86 cents per litre, and that's a statement made by the Treasury, or at least news coming out of the Treasury. What does that mean for us, Wayne, and for ordinary motorists? You're deep in the heart of this and in the thick of things when it comes to this fight. What's the latest on that?
So, yeah, look, I mean, obviously the war in Iraq has added new impetus to this discussion. And when the fuel price starts getting into the 22 rands a litre, government has to think a bit outside the box. And I think they do go into the archives of the discussions. And these are things we've been putting out there for some time. Firstly, we've said to them for years, stop increasing this fuel levy and this road accident fund. You've pushed that envelope too far. And lo and behold, in this budget in February, he didn't apply any increases to the levy. That's the first time in 25 years. So I think, that penny dropped. And that was before the Iraq war. And then obviously a few days later, and then the prices started going up. And prior to that, we'd also been saying, there's 9 other or 10 other components to this fuel price. So it's not just the fuel levy and the road accident fund that you shouldn't increase. You must go and find out what drives the wholesale margin, what drives the retail margin, what is this demand side management levy, what are these transport costs, what makes up, what are the components in there, and let's revisit those, because somewhere along the line, people have just been increasing that by CPI year after year, and maybe there's a new way. And Enoch Godongwana, the Minister of Finance, has heard that call. And they've been talking about revisiting the makeup. And suddenly when fuel goes up like it has, that becomes the catalyst to them taking this discussion seriously. And so now they are looking at that. And it was good to hear the discussions that are taking place to say, actually, we've looked at 4 components and we can shave off 80 cents or so. That's a good start. But there's another issue that we want them to contemplate. We're moving into a space where this becomes an emergency matter. If we don't curb the price increases, it has a knock-on effect, and that starts to have a bigger effect on the economy. And what we're saying is treat these high uncontrolled fuel prices as a result of international oil prices as an emergency, and look at picking up the cost when it gets to a certain level completely, or to give us a reprieve on the entire fuel levy component, because that is just a tax component. It goes straight into the tax basket of 3 rand 85 or so cents a litre. And if you do that, you bring the fuel price below 20 rand again. And you don't have to do it every month, but just do it month by month while the fuel price is high. And that's also been mooted recently, or discussed and put forward recently. So that's interesting. That they are talking and thinking along the lines of what we've been thinking in the past. So this is good stuff. That's why civil society is here. It's to push these issues. It's to present government with alternatives. And sometimes you don't get the kudos for it. Sometimes you don't get the recognition. They don't say, "Hey, we're going to take up our suggestion," but the penny drops. The conversation takes place, and somewhere down the line, things change as a result of the work we've been doing for the last number of years on this space. So, I think things might happen.
Great, some progress, it seems, on the fuel levy price and what can be done to alleviate the burden on South African motorists. Let's stick with motorists now and talk about the other bugbear, the other huge headache if you need to renew your driver's license and find it practically impossible, as some people tell me, to actually get an appointment online, to actually get through the process and get your driver's license renewed. We've been discussing this on the show for some time now. OUTA has been saying to the minister and to government that the extension should just be be moved from, the time frame should be moved from 5 years to 10 years, the validity period. And you could do that without changing anything on the systems. Now, you've been pushing quite hard, and we've got an update for our viewers tonight, because OUTA requested the extension of driver's licenses, and actually the first time that OUTA has met with the Minister of Transport on this particular issue. So something's happening, OUTA is pushing, and the meetings are now, the door to the ministry has opened. What does it mean for OUTA? What does it mean for OUTA supporters and motorists in South Africa? Let's talk about this March deadline that's looming for driver's license renewals. And the minister has firmly stated that he will not extend this date any further. Is this a fair statement from the minister? Let's ask Andrea Korp, Senior Legal Manager, Project Manager for OUTA. What's the deal with the minister's statement and the extension? Andrea, and how's it?
Hi, Tom. No, thank you for the opportunity. I think this is a big issue that impacts a lot of people. And I think just one thing to make clear is just remember, your driver's license never expires. It's your driver's license card that expires. And by law, in terms of the National Road Traffic Act, you have to renew your driver's license card every 5 years. Well, it's actually the National Road Traffic regulations that stipulate that, not necessarily the Act, but the regulations are attached to the Act, or they give meat to the Act. So what the minister did, and I mean, we have been through tough times these past 2 to 3 years, specifically with COVID and the backlogs of it. But what people should not keep out of mind is that backlogs have existed before COVID interrupted everything.
Yeah.
I mean, when some of the driver's license testing centers were closed, so people could not go in and renew their license cards. They could only do it online. So that just exacerbated the issue with renewal of licenses. So what the minister did in order to just alleviate some of the pressure in the backlogs, or to assist people, is to extend the validity for when your driver's license card expired during a certain date, the date was then, the validity was extended for a bit. Now that happened, I think, if I can recall correctly, 3 times since 2020, the minister extended it, with this being the 3rd and final time. So in terms of this latest extension, according to the minister, the extension will be until the 31st of March of this year. Now, he has been, and I think the MEC or the provincial government in Gauteng has been very vocal about this point of they're not going to renew the extension. Now, I think this question, or the answer is kind of twofold, because we agree to this to the one extent that it shouldn't be extended past the 31 March deadline. But on the other hand, we say, instead of just granting certain people an extension, rather change it to extend everybody's driver's license by 5. So instead of just having a couple of people extending the validity, extend everybody's license. So it might be a fair statement from the minister, but with a proviso that a decision needs to be taken with regards to other people in the rest of the country.
Now, we keep hearing this word backlog. Andrea, the system is backlogged. What is the cause of this backlog?
Well, I think it's a multi-pronged causalization. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, backlogs have existed prior to COVID, but government seems to blame shift a bit on COVID, but not acknowledging the fact that their online systems, or the NATA system, the systems in charge of administrating renewal of licenses, are defunct. So, I mean, just a couple of examples. I think we all know about the card machine that broke down in November. That's attributed to the backlogs, people not being able to get their cards being renewed. Some provinces, like for instance Gauteng, only make use of an online booking system. Specifically in 2012, you could not go into a driver's license testing center without an online booking. Yeah. So it's a multi-pronged approach. There's a lot of factors that attribute to this backlogs. But I think the main thing here is it's an ineffective system and administrative system that really the government needs to focus on and correcting.
Wayne, why is this such an important project for OUTA?
Well, there's a number of factors that come into it. It's the whole application of and process of driver's licenses and renewals is, you can see it doesn't work effectively. In some provinces, it works well. In others, there's inconsistencies in how it's applied in different provinces. And as society, when you have a law that you have to comply to, the government needs to make it easy as possible for you to comply. So when they say you have to have a driver's license to drive a car, and it's difficult to do that, to get a license or get a renewal one, then you have people driving without driver's licenses, either expired, and then there's fines, or people saying, well, I'm going to drive and get away with it. And that's the biggest issue here. So you have a breakdown in law and order, which is perpetuated and triggered by government's own inefficiencies and administrative bungling. And then government starts to suffer a crisis of legitimacy when it cannot manage its own laws. And I've said this on e-tolls, I've said it on many occasions. That's why we fight these irrational laws, OUTA and all of those things. You don't want to live in a country where lawlessness exists, not because people want to be lawless, because people struggle to participate in the law, to be lawful. And then it becomes the norm. It becomes like, why have you got a driver's license? You don't need one. And those conversations probably even happening right now. In fact, I think South Africa is one of those countries that you can drive an unroadworthy car with no driver's license, no vehicle license, and probably get away with it for the rest of your life. That's the indictment, the real issue. So coming back to why it's important is we've got to keep putting pressure on government to remind them that they need to manage their laws, our laws. They need to administer them properly. And if you're going to start giving deadlines and extending deadlines and then having machines breaking down, and you're running a circus here, and fix this, and we have to put them under pressure to do so. So we provide and do our research and look for other alternatives, and one of those is this extension to 10 years. Maybe the government shouldn't extend the 31st deadline. I don't know. You got to put a peg in the sand somewhere. There's two sides to the story. People are waiting late to renew, but government system is also making it difficult to renew. So it is government's problem, not just ours. It's theirs, and they have to fix it. But one easy way is to take OUTA's suggestion of international best practice and make driver's licenses valid for 10 years. There's no problem in doing that. It's very easy, and it takes this problem away tomorrow, the backlog.
Well, let's hope that government sees the light, and we'll get an update from Andrea in just a moment about that meeting with the minister. But before we do, I want to talk about the survey that OUTA ran last year, asking people about their experiences when it came to renewing their driver's licenses. What were the findings that came out of that survey, Andrea?
Well, thanks, Tom. So we conducted an online survey, and we had 3,685 participants to this survey. So the survey targeted a broad range of motorists and was conducted nationwide in all provinces to kind of give us a factual, quantitative data of the broader picture of the failures of the driver's license renewal process in South Africa. So some of the main issues that people are very frustrated with, so we call them the frustration trigger points. What we found was, the number one frustration was the long queues at the driver's license testing centers. Then a further very highly rated one was actually getting a booking on the online system. We have some triggers: poor staff attitude, poor, slow or broken systems, signage, it's unclear which queue you should actually be in, lack of seating, some people witnessed bribery, and then also failure to accept card payments. So this survey revealed a plethora of negative experiences, as it gave motorists the opportunity to articulate the experiences. So motorists, for instance, in Gauteng complained a lot about not being able to successfully book appointments online. But those that could make appointments still had to go into the driver's license testing centers, stand in long queues, and the set appointment slots are not observed or wasn't even used. So when we looked at the results indicated that 65% of these motorists are frustrated by the ineffectiveness of the online booking system. And the online booking system makes provision for online payment as you book a slot, as everybody knows. And but the results have shown that even the system is flawed and unworkable. And something that came out that was very interesting about the survey is the survey asked whether motorists would support the call to extend driver's licenses from 5 to 10 years. And what we found is that only 3.4% of these motorists did not agree. But the rest of the 96.7% of the motorists agreed or were in favor of an extension for 5 to 10 years validity period.
What would be government's objection to extending from 5 to 10 years? I mean, why would government not do it?
Well, I think we can only speculate, but our speculation is there's a cost element attached to this, because at the end of the day, these fees that you have to pay, for instance, the Road Traffic Management Corporation, or the RTMC, is the entity that manages or manages the NATA system. So that's the system where all your traffic-related data, your card, your vehicle registrations, all that information is being held. So the RTMC is in charge of that system, and they are also in charge of giving convenience services. So, for instance, the online booking system would then kind of fall under the RTMC. And as we've seen in the past couple of months, there are fees attached to it. Everybody knows that if you go and you have to renew a driver's license card, or you have to do a transfer of ownership of your motor vehicle, there's always a cost associated to that. So we can speculate that the only reason why government won't be amenable to this extension might be because there's a cost element involved, which is not a good excuse at all. That shouldn't be. That should not be the defining factor. At the end of the day, government is there to, especially entities like the RTMC, they are there to provide services and not to be profit or money-making system.
However, as a skeptical South African, I want to point this question to you, Wayne. As a skeptical South African, having seen how corruption works in South Africa, you talk about that machine that stopped working. That machine is a money-making machine for someone. It's a money-making machine for some business. And if the machine's not working, it makes no money. And if you extend the driver's licenses to 10 years, I'm not going to go and extend my license until year 9, and maybe the machine doesn't make any cards. Is that machine and that contract and the spin-offs that come from all of this a big part of this story that we are looking at the moment?
Yeah, so you're quite right. If you follow the money, if you follow the contracts and the machine and who, that was all outsourced for a long time, then it was insourced, and the outsourced people had to, buy a machine. They had to write that off over 5 years as renewed. But the simple reality is it probably costs less than 15 Rand to make a card, and you and I pay, 200s plus. And there's a lot of middlemen there. There's the card account guys they sell it on to the various authority, the levels within government, who then eventually get it to you. And the RTMC, as Andrea says, everybody's making money along the way. And what's actually happening in this whole transport department? You've got the RTMC, the RTIA, driver's license card account, these little pockets of empires that all employ a lot of people, boards, executives, and they make money, and they become cash cows, and they become entities that say, let's increase the fees, let's put new fees there, let's find a new category here, online fees, and they make money, and they reduce their need, or they remove their need on treasury funding, they remove their need for treasury oversight, and they start paying themselves fat bonuses. So we saw was it the RTIA or the RTMC where Jeff Chewy went from 3.3 million Rand a year salary to over 10 in 1 year?
It's a nice amount.
RTIA.
RTIA. I mean, this is the type of behavior you have. And then they start inventing things like, hey, let's rent some buses to do mobile driver's license centers. 11 million Rand a year for a couple of buses. And then they start dishing out audit fees, so who's going to be our auditing company? So the driver's license card account's got 50 people working for it. It's not a difficult thing to audit. How much do you think the audit fees were for a small organization like the driver's license card account is 3.6 million rand in a year. I mean, we're an organization, we don't pay over 80,000 rand a year for our audit. We have stringent audits to external audit. So you can see what's happening here. This is money for mates and connected companies, and this is how the ANC funds itself. We've said this, and we'll say it directly. That is why we have so much corruption, because this ruling party it feeds itself through these types of deals, and we have to stop it. So those are the types of things we're going to be fighting big time. And I must say, Andrea, congratulations. Well done on that report. You know, our team has done a lot of research, and she put together a lovely report, a position paper, which we presented to the minister, giving the arguments and the views and the international best practice on why we should move to 10 years. And it's that compelling story, and you can see it on our website, that you know, governments can't ignore. Hopefully they're listening on this one, and hopefully we get this one right.
I was watching some MTV and footage the other day, a roast, and the minister, I think he wasn't a minister at the time, it was in between ministries or portfolios, and he was on a comedy show, and I always battle to reconcile what I saw on a comedy show with the seriousness of the job of being a Minister of Transport. So I am dying to find out what the meeting with the Minister of Transport was like. I mean, what was the level of seriousness in that meeting, and was it a serious meeting? Was there any joking around, which is, you know, we come to expect from the minister? He's quite a colourful character and personality. So I'd really like to know what happened in this meeting, Andrea. What was the tone, and what transpired when you went to meet the Minister of Transport on this very issue?
Thanks, Tom. I'm just going to touch on it, but I'm also going to ask Wayne just to give his view and his feel of what he felt in terms of the engagement. So from my side, I must say I was quite surprised to a certain extent, because he really, I got the feeling that he treated it like a business meeting. There was no, I mean, he made some quirks and some comments which we found to be hilarious. The user pay principle was brought up, which is totally irrelevant, but he really treated it as a working meeting. And he also alluded to the fact that, yes, he's seriously been considering making this move, because we are not the only organization that have been raising this issue. But he did coin us as the voice of the people, which I think is an amazing compliment coming from him. It might just only be lip service, but at the end of the day, recognizing that we do contribute, and when we contribute, we come with the facts, the hard-hitting facts. It's no speculation. It's well thought over research, well done research. The team was amazing on that. And then just presenting it, there was no room for him to argue. So I think that was one of the main takeaways I could take from it. And it really looked like he was taking us seriously. So whether or not he's going to action it, we don't know. But he in his own admission said he'd like to meet with OUTA in 2 weeks' time to give us feedback, and he will give us feedback, and he will give us good feedback. That's what his words were. He's going to give us sufficient feedback. Now, wait and see, because we have been trying to engage with 3 months, and then out of the blue he said, let's engage within 2 days. So I think that's just the unpredictability of him. But from my perspective, I really thought it was a good engagement. He listened. The arguments were well put forward. Wayne did a spectacular job of just communicating that. So no, from my side, I really thought and think that it was a good meeting. So I'll give over to you, Wayne. Wayne, what was your feeling regarding our engagement with the minister?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea, and well done. It was, as you say, he took us seriously. It wasn't a flippant meeting. It was after hours. He had 2 special advisors with him. He had the DG himself and somebody else. He bought a team, and he said, you know, he said, I want to hear your views. Try and convince me, or tell us why you think this should happen, this move from 5 to 10 years. And And as Andrea said, he's having this conversation with us in recognition of our role in civil society and the fact that we do, we make sense, even though, and acknowledge, we don't always agree. We have our headbutts, but he wants to hear us. And he listened to the presentation, and then afterwards he gave us some indications as to the fact that he valued it. Him and his team, that they would certainly take our research paper, that we'd done the presentation, and that he would meet in 2 weeks' time. Now, that remains to be seen, because he has said that before and hasn't followed up on those other meetings when we were discussing e-tolls with him. But nonetheless, it was serious. He had his team there. It was after hours. And he can't, as a minister, be flippant on these meetings. So it was good. Doesn't mean to say we fall for the seriousness, we fall for his, lip service or nice words. I think he was being professional, and we got to acknowledge that, as we were, and let's see what comes of it. It's these type of engagements, as Paul was talking about earlier. We've met with government on many occasions, different government at different government levels, DGs, the ministers, deputy ministers, and every one of these meetings, when you have that audience, and they do take it seriously, whether they act on it or not, is a good milestone in civil society's work.
How so, Wayne? I just want, because when I think of you and OUTA meeting a ministry, for me, it seems like quite a delicate balance, because you don't want to be so confrontational with government that they put up walls, and at the same time, you don't want to sit around having tea and cookies and becoming friends with each other and then lose the power that you've got. How do you maintain that balance so that these meetings are effective?
So, Tom, you're asking and putting forward a very, very good point. If you are a civil activist organization that just fights, that just slates government, that just is angry, you put up walls. But when you're a civil action organization that reasons, that puts logic forward, that researches and backs your statements up, then they take you seriously. And then when they do open the door to hear you, you know that they have to hear you on this issue for whatever's happening in the background. For an interministerial committee meeting to be brought forward on e-tolls, and for OUTA to be sitting in the union buildings, giving our presentations to Kgalema Motlanthe and others in those days, these are big meetings. So it's very important. When Parliament asks for our inputs and presentations on certain things, or the SCOPA wants our views on a matter, that civil society is being heard. It wasn't always the case, though. But so you build this reputation over time. And obviously in Zuma's days, they shut the doors. They didn't want to, because they didn't want to hear what you had to say. They were robbing the state. So you have a government who is now listening. Whether they're effective, whether they're applying what you're telling them is another story.
Sure.
But it is a massive milestone every time you are able to meet at the highest echelons in lawmaking in this country and running this government. And that's as a result of the respect that's given to OUTA, because its team makes sense when it speaks and when it's on media, TV, radio, and in print. And it does great work when it puts its projects forward.
Well done to the team on getting that meeting. We look forward to updates and progress on this matter. Driver's license renewal period is what we've been discussing. I've probably got a minute or two left on the show, Wayne, and I wanted to ask you a question. And that is, it goes back to Clive Beckett's question every week. How close are we to seeing more people, or any people, in orange overalls? See, there was some movement at the NPA today. I see they've reached some secret deal with their former assets forfeiture unit head, who has been accused of wasting millions of rands of taxpayers' funds in pointless state capture litigation, and now he's gone. Obviously, labor law is in the middle of all of that, but I don't see any charges being applied to the head. But it signifies that something's happening inside the NPA. Perhaps the right people, or let me put it this way, perhaps the wrong people are being moved out. Are we getting closer? Because the frustration levels are growing among South Africans. Hey, why haven't we seen anyone prosecuted?
Yeah, look, I think they are getting closer, and there are a number of prosecutions, and ACE is there, Zoom is there, they're in court. It takes a while, we understand. We're also fed up with the NPA and how long they're taking. We know that the Zonda reports now are the big catalysts, and we must make sure they don't gather dust. That issue with Molile being let off the hook or being exited, there's two sides to that story. There's labor law. He could string that out and be paid full salary and be a barrier within, or they can get him out and make a deal. But it frustrates us because we don't like deals. If he's been found in wanting, we want to know why he's not fired and what is this deal So we can discuss that. There's pros and cons on both sides.
Sure.
But the beauty is that the NPA has said that even though we are doing this deal, getting you out the organization, criminal charges can and will be laid against you if you are found wanting in those areas. So,
Good.
Are we getting closer? Yes. Are we getting closer fast enough? No. But again, things are going to have to happen very soon now with this Zonda report and all the recommendations that come out of it. So, again, I have to keep reminding ourselves, if the Zuma faction had won in December 2017 and they were in power right now, we would have been in a massive hole, failed state. Turning the ship around doesn't happen overnight, and then understand the political dynamics within this ruling party. And people say, yeah, Ramaphosa, he must go. Sure. But you don't want David Mabuza in his place. You don't want Ace Magashule. You don't want Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. So you have the best of a bad bunch, and we make sure that the 2024 elections, people understand why. It is ridiculous to have the argument that, no, I'm not going to vote because I don't know who to vote for. I don't like who I'm going to vote for. 46% of eligible voters voted. That's sad. We need to get people out and to adopt this approach of strategic voting. In other words, vote for the least bad sometimes, just so that you can move this country forward and don't fall for populist politics. So lots of work to do in the next couple of years. We're not a political party, but we have to put political influence into the minds of people so that we can get this country out of its hole in many ways. It's not one silver bullet. It's through elections. Yeah. It's through civil activism. It's through whistleblowing protection. It's through putting your case across, presenting in Parliament. This is so much that we can do as citizens, and we have to keep doing. And I think we're too beautiful and a brilliant a people and a country to just sit back and say there's nothing we can do, let it go to the dogs. We're not going to do that.
Nah, so do I. I was in the Uber on the way here having a chat with the driver. It always lands up a political conversation with me, and he was saying, Tom, we're not going to get anything right unless we hold leaders accountable. And that was the Uber driver. He's not an OUTA employee or a member of just an average man on the street. Said it's going to stay the way it is until we hold our leaders accountable. And when we hold our leaders accountable, we will unlock the massive potential that exists in South Africa. Yeah. So it is a belief shared by most, I guess, South Africans. Accountability. Come on. We need to start seeing it from our leaders. Well, let's thank our contributors. Can you believe it? It's an hour and 2 minutes. It's time to go. Andrea Korf, Senior Legal Project Manager for OUTA. Thank you for joining us tonight, Andrea. Always lovely to see you on the screen and get updates on the projects with you.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you for everybody that listened. Thank you for the supporters, and have a wonderful and blessed week. Thank you.
And then I think Paul Powen is still on board. If you are, Paul, put your camera on and we'll say goodbye to you properly. Paul Powen, Non-Executive Director of OUTA, been there from the start. Thank you for joining us this evening. Paul, a good night to you.
Is my camera on?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you. It was good fun reminiscing on the past. It's a long time ago, some of the stuff. But OUTA is doing an unbelievable job, and I'm very, very proud of what this team has achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and well done to you, Paul. And then finally, Wayne, your closing comments for the show tonight.
Just again, we've reflected on so much stuff. These projects don't happen without people energy, people power. Thanks, Andrea. Well done, Stefani, and everybody behind the scenes that make up this incredible team. But always to the supporters. Without you, we don't exist. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your energy. Tom, to you, Another great show. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Looking at the hearts and the thumbs up that are flying across the screen, and I've been keeping an eye on the comments as they've been flying through. We're not putting them up on screen at the moment because we are now streaming to YouTube and Facebook, and our service providers tell us that we'll have the facility to put comments from YouTube and Facebook on screen shortly. But while we can't do that, we're not putting comments on screen, but we are looking at them. Samantha van Nispen has been watching your comments on YouTube. Masego Motswaneng has been dealing with you on Facebook. Devony Davids put this show together, and I'm Tom London with you for the hour and another hour next Wednesday. If you want to watch the show live, join us at 7 p.m. South African time on Wednesday evenings for the live version of the show. If you're watching it after Wednesday, post live, thank you very much for hitting that play button and joining us on the OUTA Hour. Your view is valued. Well, I wish you money, I wish you success, I wish you health and happiness over the next 7 days. Most of all, I wish that you'll come back and make it a date next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Don't be late. Until then, I miss you already.
Our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The OUTA Hour, where your voice matters.